objects. That was taught dogmatically for 2,000 years. Galileo came up with a simple question. He said, fellows, does a 10-pound rock fall faster than a 5-pound rock? And they said, of course. Aristotle said it does, so it must. Galileo said, if I took a 10-pound rock and I broke it in half, and I tied the two pieces together with a string, and I dropped it, would it fall like a 5-pound rock or a 10-pound rock? A brilliant question. And that one question totally stumped those who were teaching that there was a difference in velocity of objects falling to Earth. We know today that aside from wind friction, everything falls the same speed. But for 2,000 years, that false doctrine was taught by the majority. For many years, it was taught the Earth was in the center of the solar system. As the evidence accumulated from the planets' movements, they began to notice that several of the planets go backwards for a few weeks as Earth passes them up. Mars and Venus and others have backwards loop. So they developed elaborate theories to try to rescue the geocentric theory. They came up with theories of epicycles. They said, well, the planets are not only going around the Earth, they're going in little circles while they go in their major circle, epicycles. The mathematics became horrendous to try to justify that. What they should have done is abandon their basic fundamental theory. The Earth is not in the middle. And today we have many elaborate theories trying to satisfy and justify and resurrect and save the theory of evolution. We have the punctuated equilibrium, the hopeful monster theory of Gould and Goldschmidt and Niles Eldridge and those fellas. And there are 14 different varieties of evolution out there, all of them disproving the others. And what they ought to do is abandon the basic concept. This world could not evolve, did not evolve. George Washington was bled to death by his own doctors in 1799 because they taught the doctrine of humors. They said if a person is sick, he has bad blood. Now, the men that taught this, that bled George Washington to death, were sincere, they were highly educated, extremely intelligent, and wrong. And we have professors today that sincerely, honestly believe, I don't question the intelligence, I don't question the educational level, I don't question the motive in most cases, but it doesn't make them right. The majority is not always right, and in a multitude of instances has been wrong. I'll give you a few examples. The first law of thermodynamics says that matter cannot be created or destroyed. Well, there is obviously a physical world here. So how did it get here? If matter cannot be created, how did it get here? It's just a fundamental question. Where did matter come from? The evolutionists have come up with the Big Bang. The telescope last summer supposedly saw the results of the Big Bang. What they said they detected, and some overzealous reporter got a hold of that and blew it out of proportion, they said they saw 30 millionths of a degree difference in background radiation. The guy who invented the sensing mechanism on the telescope said, I don't know where they got that. He said that thing won't sense 30 millionths of a degree. It's not that sensitive. And if there was 30 millionths of a degree difference, that still does not prove it came from a Big Bang. It could prove it was created perfect and is decaying, declining. It's not proof for either side. And no, there is no evidence for the Big Bang. There's a multitude of evidence against it, but it is taught dogmatically in the textbooks. Here's an example. Prentice Hall, General Science, 1992. 18 to 20 billion years ago, all the matter in the universe was concentrated into one very dense, very hot region that may have been much smaller than a period on this page. I was on the airplane flying to California years ago, and I happened to sit next to a professor from Berkeley University. I don't know if you know anything about Berkeley, but Berkeley is not a Bible college. And as we were flying out there, the professor and I got in discussion on creation evolution. We had a 4-hour flight together from Dallas to Berkeley and to San Francisco. And he said he believed in the Big Bang Theory, and he told me that he said all the dust in outer space 20 billion years ago started drawing together into this little tiny dot, and he said it was spinning faster and faster, which is just what they say in the books. It spun faster and faster, and finally it exploded out into space. Boom! The Big Bang. I said, sir, could I ask you a couple of questions? He said, sure, go ahead. I said, where did matter come from? Who made matter? He said, well, science has not been able to answer that question. I said, okay. Second question. Where did, you said all this matter, all this dust in space started drawing together. What made it get together? He said, well, gravity. All particles have an attraction for each other. And I said, sir, I understand that. I teach physical science. Physics is one of my courses. I understand gravitational attraction, acceleration due to gravity, the inverse square law. I teach all that stuff. But that doesn't explain where gravity comes from. Who made gravity? Who made the laws that obviously govern this universe? The laws of gravity, centrifugal force, inertia, etc. There are laws that govern the worlds. Who made them? He said, well, I don't know. I said, okay. You said it was all squeezing into this little bitty dot, spinning real fast, and it exploded into space. I said, where did the energy come from? It requires energy to make something move. You have to put energy in. Where did the energy come from? He said, well, I don't know. I said, okay, sir, could I ask you another question? He said, sure, go ahead. He was 0 for 3 so far. I said, does Berkeley University, where you teach, have a merry-go-round? You know what a merry-go-round is, don't you? You go round, around, around till you puke. You've been on those before. He said, no, we don't have a merry-go-round. I said, well, that's unfortunate because you can put 6 kids on the merry-go-round. If you get 6 fourth graders, put them on the merry-go-round, and get the football team out there to push it as fast as it'll go. We're going to get the merry-go-round going clockwise as fast as it'll go. Now, if you have a digital watch, you may not know what clockwise means, so you see me afterwards, I'll explain that. But we're going to spin the thing clockwise. The kids are going to go through 4 very distinct phases on that merry-go-round. They're going to start off in phase 1. They'll be screaming and yelling, oh boy, this is fun, let's go, faster, faster. You get up around 30 or 40 miles an hour, the kids are going to enter phase 2. That's where they stop screaming, and they just quietly concentrate on trying to hang on for dear life. You get up around 60 or 70 miles an hour, they enter phase 3. That's where they're screaming again. But now they're going to be screaming, stop, stop, slow down, let me off. Don't stop, keep going. You get up around 100 miles an hour, or maybe sometimes less. You enter phase 4. That's where the kids begin to fly off the merry-go-round. Now, when the kids fly off the merry-go-round, you will notice a neat phenomenon. If the merry-go-round is going clockwise, as the kids fly off, they will be spinning clockwise until they encounter some resistance like a tree or a pole or the parking lot. They'll be going the same direction as the merry-go-round was. That's one of the laws of physics called the conservation of angular momentum. In a frictionless environment, if a spinning object fragments, the pieces that spin off spin the same direction because the outer part is already moving faster than the inner part, and so it maintains that same rotational velocity, same rotational direction. The conservation of angular momentum is a well-known law, and the professor on the airplane said, oh yes, Mr. Hovind, I'm familiar with that. I said, would you explain something to me then? He said, sure, go ahead. I said, if the universe started from a Big Bang 4.6 billion years ago, would you explain to me why all 9 planets in our solar system go around the sun counterclockwise while the sun spins clockwise? The sun spins backwards once every 25 days. This is a microcosm of the macrocosm. How could we end up with 9 planets going one direction and a sun spinning the opposite direction? It could not have come from a Big Bang. How did it happen? He said, well, I guess I don't have an answer for that. I said, okay, no problem. I said, these planets are not only going around the sun, these planets are spinning around themselves. However, 7 of the planets are spinning one direction, counterclockwise like the Earth viewed from their north pole. 2 of them, Venus and Uranus, are spinning backwards, possibly Pluto. I said, how did the 2 planets get going backwards? He said, well, I guess I don't know. I said, okay, no problem. I said, there are 50 or 60 known moons in our solar system. Out of those 50 or 60 known moons, at least 11 spin backwards. 4 of them travel backwards around their planet. How did this happen? He said, well, I don't know. I said, would you agree that that's pretty hard on the Big Bang Theory, that if this little microcosm is part of the macrocosm, that goes against the known laws of science? He said, well, you have a point there. He said, how do you think it happened? I said, well, I think it's pretty simple. I think in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, and God did it that way on purpose, just to make the Big Bang Theory look. 30 million years ago, these animals evolved. They are ancestral to both humans and modern apes. Ancestral to humans? They don't seem to be able to figure it out. For 30 years now, we've been teaching the kids they are nothing but an animal. And if you look in the public schools today, many of them act like animals. And they don't seem to get the connection. It's a direct result of what we are teaching them. If I told you that if you kissed a frog, it would turn into a prince, you would say, no, Mr. Hovind, that's a fairy tale. But in the universities and high schools in this country, they teach frogs do turn to princes if you add one magic ingredient. And it's not a kiss. The magic ingredient that changes a frog to a prince is time. Billions of years. Between 3 billion and 3.5 billion years ago, it is in all the textbooks. You see it everywhere. You see it on Carl Sagan's show. Sagan, Cosmos, billions of years ago, and in National Geographic, they talk about over billions of years. It's just, that is a fundamental belief in evolution. They have to have billions of years. I have nearly 500 scientific evidences that the world is not billions of years old. And those that want to teach real science need